The storm came earlier than forecasted. From seat 2A, Karen Lawson watched as streaks of lightning cracked across the clouds below. Her eyes, sharp and alert beneath her reading glasses, flicked from the window to the blinking seatbelt sign overhead. She had designed systems for these exact moments, but tonight she wasn't in the cockpit, nor in a control tower. She was a passenger. For now. The cabin lights flickered once, twice. Then, blackout. A collective gasp swept through the plane. The hum of the engines remained steady, but something was wrong. Very wrong. The flight attendants froze mid-step. A baby began crying in the back. The air conditioning cut out. Monitors blinked and died. And the emergency lighting system, the one required by law to stay on during any outage, didn't activate. Karen unbuckled her belt immediately. "Ma'am, please stay seated." A young flight attendant barked as he moved past, trying to calm passengers. Karen ignored him. She reached under her seat and pulled out a sleek, matte black laptop. A tap of her thumbprint. Access granted. A flashing red screen met her eyes. Power disruption detected. Multiple unauthorized overrides logged. Her heart dropped. That override code wasn't random, it was a council code. Somebody on the plane, or someone with jurisdiction over the flight systems, had deliberately killed internal systems in the middle of a storm. Karen's pulse rose. This wasn't an accident. This was sabotage. She looked across the aisle at her sons, Jordan and Malik, 10 and 13, sitting with their aunt in row 2C and 2D. Malik noticed her expression. His brows lifted in silent question. She gave him a nod, reassuring but firm. "Stay calm." Karen closed the laptop halfway and stood, making her way toward the galley. She wasn't going to let anyone die tonight. Meanwhile, in the cockpit, chaos had already begun. The first officer struggled to reach ground control. Static crackled across their headset. The internal cabin systems had lost power, not flight critical, but dangerous during severe weather. "Who issued the override?" the captain demanded. No answer. Then the cabin phone rang. Back in the galley, a man in a slate-gray suit blocked Karen's path. Tall, pale, with a security ID clipped to his breast pocket. "Randall Knox, AOC Oversight Officer. You shouldn't be back here," he said flatly. Karen met his gaze, unflinching. "You cut power to the cabin during an active storm. You've put lives at risk." "I enforced a violation protocol," Knox said coldly. "An anonymous complaint was filed about a non-compliant system on this aircraft. Protocol Skyblack 2 requires isolation until it can be verified." "You cut power to a cabin with children, people on oxygen," Karen hissed. "This isn't protocol. It's personal." Knox leaned in slightly. "You think you're untouchable because of who you are. But this isn't your turf anymore, Miss Lawson." Her voice dropped to a dangerous calm. "That's Dr. Lawson, and you just messed with a woman who controls the power grid you're flying on." Knox blinked. Then the turbulence hit. The plane jolted hard, metal groaning as if the sky itself had clenched its fists. A scream rang out. Somewhere near the back, an oxygen mask dropped. Useless. The system that would have activated cabin-wide oxygen distribution? Cut. A child's voice called out in panic. "Mom?" Karen pushed past Knox and pulled out her phone, hot-wired with admin access to SkyTech systems. In under 15 seconds, she bypassed the tampered system and engaged manual override from her device. Lights flickered once, then roared back to life. The AC returned. Monitors lit up. Life support engaged. The cabin exhaled all at once. Karen turned to Knox, who stood stunned in the galley. "I just saved this flight. What exactly were you trying to do?" He didn't answer, but the fear in his eyes was clear. He hadn't expected her to fight back. As Karen returned to her seat, flight attendants now moving again, whispers buzzed through the cabin. "Who was that lady? How did she do that? Was she with the airline?" Malik leaned over the armrest. "Mom, what just happened?" Karen gave a small smile. "Someone thought they could silence me, but they forgot. I built the system." By the time the plane landed for an emergency inspection, there were already men in suits waiting on the tarmac. Not FAA, not TSA. A special task unit from the Department of Transportation's Aviation Integrity Division. And they were holding a file, with Karen's name on it. She exhaled slowly. This wasn't turbulence. This was the beginning of war. The landing was rough, more crash than touchdown. As the plane's wheels screeched against the soaked tarmac, passengers clutched armrests in each other. But Karen Lawson sat still, eyes narrowed, hands folded. She wasn't afraid. She was calculating, because she knew this wasn't over. The second the plane rolled to a stop near a remote terminal, a cold voice came over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, please remain seated. We're being met by ground authorities for a brief safety inspection." A brief inspection, Karen thought, never required 4 black SUVs and a man with a badge waiting by the gate. She spotted them through the window. Agents in suits, raincoats whipping in the wind, scanning the manifest like they already knew who to look for. And then her name was called. "Dr. Karen Lawson, please disembark immediately with your government-issued credentials." The cabin fell silent. Heads turned. Karen stood calmly and reached for her carry-on. Her sons looked frightened. She gave them a look. "Stay seated." Aunt Maya wrapped her arms around them, eyes wide with questions she didn't ask out loud. Karen walked the aisle slowly, every step echoing with purpose. At the bottom of the stairs, 2 agents approached. The taller one, stone-faced, graying at the temples, flashed his ID. "Agent Walker, Aviation Integrity Division. We need to speak with you. Now." Karen nodded. "Lead the way." They moved toward a secured hangar. Inside, fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Surveillance monitors lined one wall, tracking the storm's path and every grounded aircraft within a 50-mile radius. A third man waited inside. Younger, smug, arms folded. Randall Knox. Karen stiffened. "You called this?" she asked. Knox smirked. "I merely reported a possible security breach. It's the agency's job to investigate." Agent Walker turned to her. "Is it true, Dr. Lawson, that you initiated a protocol override using Skyred Code 09? Karen met his gaze. "Yes," he nodded. "That's a high-level authority protocol, reserved for infrastructure emergencies only, and typically issued from ground control, not Seat 2A on a commercial flight." Karen remained steady. There was no time. The power failure endangered lives. "I reactivated critical systems after they were manually shut down mid-flight." "And who shut them down?" Walker asked. She turned her head slightly, eyes locking onto Knox. "Ask him," Knox scoffed. "Baseless accusation. I don't have the authority to cut power on board." Karen opened her bag, pulled out her laptop, and turned it toward Walker. "Authorization log?" she said. "System accessed using a Level 4 Council override under the ID of Randall S. Knox 5 minutes before the blackout. I built this security layer. Every action leaves a fingerprint." Walker scrolled through the log, expression unreadable. Then he looked at Knox. "Mr. Knox, care to explain?" Knox's smile faltered. "There must be a mistake. This could have been spoofed. You know how tricky back-end systems can be." Karen folded her arms. "Except you forgot one thing. The override came from inside the plane. The only person on board with council-level clearance was you." Walker stepped back. "We'll be taking this for forensic review. Dr. Lawson, until this is resolved, I'm going to ask that you refrain from accessing any flight control systems or airport infrastructure." Karen nodded once. "Understood." As they led her to a holding area for questioning, she glanced back. Her sons were watching from the window of the terminal shuttle. She raised her hand. A silent promise. "I'm coming back." Inside the small gray interview room, Agent Walker sat opposite her. "No one's questioning your integrity, Dr. Lawson," he said. "But your access level, it's unprecedented, and the override you used, it's never been deployed on a commercial flight before." Karen's voice was calm but firm, "because no one's ever been pushed to use it. But the system is there for a reason." Walker paused. "Can I ask, why you? Why does a passenger, even a CTO, have access that deep?" She looked him straight in the eye. "Because I didn't just build systems, I rebuilt an entire sector. After the cyber attack on Mid-Atlantic Air 3 years ago, I was hired to design a defense matrix that would stop rogue interference, external or internal. To do that, I needed keys no one else had, and I kept them. Because I knew someone like Knox would come." Walker tapped his pen. "And why would he target you?" Karen leaned forward, her voice lower now. "Because I refused to sign off on AOC's last expansion proposal. They wanted to centralize all access control under one private contractor, with no transparency, no audits. I called it what it was, a power grab." Walker stared for a moment, then nodded. "All right, then let's talk about how deep this goes." Outside the room, Karen's phone, confiscated earlier, lit up silently in a sealed evidence bag. A new message appeared on the locked screen. From unknown subject. "They've already started." Attachment, live surveillance footage inside the aircraft. It showed a crew member in uniform. tampering with the cabin power box. But it wasn't any crew member Karen remembered boarding with. Her eyes narrowed. This wasn't just Randall. This was a network, and she'd just turned on the first light. The footage looped again. Karen's eyes never left the screen. The grainy video showed a crew member kneeling beside a cabinet panel near the rear galley, an area off-limits during flight. He wasn't resetting anything. He was rerouting. Agent Walker stood behind her, arms crossed. "We've confirmed he's not registered with this flight crew." Karen's voice was low. "So who is he?" Walker nodded to the tech officer behind the desk. "Run facial match against the FAA contractor database. Cross-check with private aviation subcontractors too." The screen froze as the man turned his head just enough for a profile shot. The tech began typing. Karen tapped the screen gently. Enhance the patch on his left shoulder. The image sharpened, barely, but enough to show a logo. It wasn't airline issued. It wasn't even military. It was private. And Karen recognized it instantly. ClearPath Systems. A third-tier contractor with a surprisingly large number of temporary hires. She'd flagged them in an audit 6 months earlier for bidding under multiple shell names on FAA contracts. Randall had pushed back then too. Hard. Now, it all made sense. Agent Walker frowned. "We'll need a warrant to pull their files." Karen didn't wait. She reached into her coat and pulled out a silver USB drive. "You won't need to." He raised a brow. "What's this?" "My backup logs. Internal audits, flagged anomalies, all tied to ClearPath's deployments over the past year. I kept copies. Call it instinct." Walker inserted the drive into a secure terminal. As files loaded, folder after folder labeled with strings like CPS F-duty control tier and ghost IP access logs opened one by one. "Jesus," the tech whispered. "They've been testing remote command functions on live aircraft. In flight, that's illegal as hell." Karen nodded slowly. "And Randall Knox is the gatekeeper." Walker stared at the screen. "Why didn't you go public with this?" Karen's tone was steel. "Because I still believed the system could fix itself from the inside. But now I know better." At that moment, the door burst open. A junior agent rushed in, breathless. "We've got a breach." Walker stood up instantly. "Where?" "Terminal control room." AOC staff just walked in unannounced, said they were enforcing a lockdown on SkyTech personnel access. "They've sealed off the systems you flagged." Karen stood. "That's a cover-up in real time." Walker turned to her. "Can you still access the back end?" Karen didn't even hesitate. "Only from one location. But if they flag my credentials, I'll need to go ghost mode." "Ghost mode?" She looked at him calmly. "I built back doors they don't know exist." 10 minutes later, Karen stood in front of a secure terminal inside a backup control room deep beneath the airport, a room designed for emergencies, shielded from external signals. Walker had cleared the space. 2 guards stood at the door. Karen took a breath and typed in a string of code known only to her and one other person. Someone who hadn't spoken to her in almost 4 years. Her ex-husband, the co-architect of the Skynet core grid. She paused, then pressed enter. The screen blinked. Access denied. Walker stepped closer. "Problem?" Karen's face was unreadable. "He changed the handshake key." "You mean your ex?" She nodded once. "And if he changed it, that means he's involved." The room went quiet. Back at the main building, Maya sat with Jordan and Malik in the waiting lounge. Her phone buzzed with a single message from Karen. "Take the boys to the safe terminal. Don't wait." Maya's eyes widened. She stood instantly. "Come on, kids. We're moving." "Where's Mom?" Malik asked. "She'll meet us soon. We're just going to a quieter place." Inside the control room, Karen launched an emergency protocol, Project Obsidian. A security override that hadn't been used since it was created post-Mid-Atlantic breach. It wasn't elegant, it wasn't clean, but it would give her 90 seconds of full back-end access to unfiltered logs and ghost routes before the system locked her out for good. She typed fast, fingers flying. And then she saw it. Flight 447, emergency override. Injected by R. Knox, secondary access provided to ex Lawson. Her breath hitched. Xavier Lawson, her ex, the man who had helped her design the Sky Grid, then left to join a private security contractor. She never knew which one. Now she did. "ClearPath Systems. Walker," she said quietly. "We've got a much bigger problem." He looked up from the screen. The override was initiated before the storm reached the aircraft. This wasn't about emergency response. This was a stress test. They were testing remote control injection during simulated weather interference. He blinked. And we were the guinea pigs. Karen nodded. They picked this flight because I was on it, and because they thought I wouldn't fight back. Walker's jaw tightened. We'll issue a federal freeze on ClearPath immediately. Karen shook her head. It won't be enough. If Xavier's part of this, they've got shadow access to systems beyond just this airline. We need to go public. Walker hesitated. Going public makes you a target. Karen looked him dead in the eye. I already am. Just then, a second notification popped up on the secure screen. Live video feed. Unauthorized access detected. Source: Skyport Lounge Security Cam 3. Karen clicked it. The feed opened, and what she saw made her blood run cold. It was her sons, Jordan and Malik. Red targeting dots had appeared on the lounge wall behind them, just like before. And this time, they weren't just watching, they were moving in. The security feed stuttered once, then sharpened. There they were. Jordan and Malik, sitting on a terminal bench, legs swinging, unaware. Maya was speaking to an attendant, her back turned, and just beyond the glass wall, a man in a dark coat with an earpiece. Standing still. Too still. Karen's heart slammed against her ribs. Get me audio, she barked. The technician scrambled to patch in a feed from the Skyport lounge. Seconds later, Maya's voice crackled through the speaker. We're just waiting for my sister. She works with the FAA. Karen snatched the mic from the console. Skyport Security. This is Dr. Karen Lawson. Authorization code Echo Alpha 93. Lock all exits. Evacuate Lounge 3. Do it now. Confirmed, came the reply, slow and unsure. But you're not on the chain of command. Karen's tone turned lethal. If you don't move now, children will die. The man behind the glass shifted. He wasn't security, and he was reaching into his coat. Agent Walker didn't ask questions. He was already dialing his radio. Evac protocol on Skyport Lounge 3. Armed response. Threat level orange. Move. But Karen wasn't waiting. She turned back to the terminal. Open the emergency grid access. The tech hesitated. That's flight only, not for terminals. Do it. A red-coded interface blinked open. Karen typed fast, bypassing non-critical access layers until she reached the localized grid controller for the terminal wings. Shutting off power? Walker guessed. Karen shook her head. I'm overriding the security feed. We'll blind them, but only for 20 seconds. And then, Karen looked him in the eye, then we run the playbook they thought I'd buried. In the lounge, the lights flickered, then went out. The man in the coat tensed, then stepped forward. Maya spun. Jordan, Malik, run. But before he could reach them, the blast doors sealed shut. Seconds later, 2 airport security agents rushed in from the emergency stairs, followed by federal marshals. The man in the coat turned, bolting down a side hallway, only to be intercepted by another agent coming from the tarmac. Karen watched from the control feed as they tackled him hard, knocking the earpiece to the floor. She zoomed in. It wasn't a standard comms device. It was military grade and encrypted. Her stomach dropped. This went way beyond Randall Knox. Back in the secure room, the technician turned to Karen. You've got another incoming message. Karen clicked it open. It was from the same anonymous source as before. Subject, they're not after you, they're after control. Attachment, Karen opened the file. It was a classified AOC document dated 3 months prior. Objective, establish real-time override capacity on commercial aircraft via embedded contractors and third-party systems. Phase 1, ClearPath systems. Phase 2, federal consolidation. Below that, a chilling line, key vulnerabilities lie within, Lawson X, Lawson K. Karen froze. They hadn't just been testing tech, they were testing her. Agent Walker, she said quietly, I need protection for my kids, round the clock, no excuses. You've got it, he said immediately, but Karen wasn't done, and I need a secure line to Channel 14, Kristen Lively. Walker blinked. The reporter? Karen nodded. It's time this story hits the ground, and the air. 10 hours later, the segment aired live across the nation. Turbulence at 30,000 feet. Was this flight a test run for something bigger? Kristen Lively stood in front of the terminal, mic in hand, as she delivered the opening lines. Tonight, we investigate a growing concern in U.S. aviation. Private contractors gaining control of aircraft systems without passenger knowledge, under the banner of security. What began as a power outage on one storm-battered flight has now unraveled into a deeper conspiracy. Cut to footage of the lounge lockdown. Cut to Karen's voice from a phone interview. They didn't just cut the lights, they cut accountability. and they thought no one would notice. Within hours, "Protect Our Flights" trended globally. Aviation unions issued open letters, former FAA employees came forward, whistleblowers from 3 other airports confirmed strange ClearPath protocols installed quietly over the past year. And Randall Knox? He went silent. No press, no response. But that night, as Karen sat with her sons in a secure hotel, Malik looked up at her and asked, "Mom, did you stop them?" Karen didn't answer right away. She pulled him close. "I stopped them this time," she whispered, "but we're not done yet." Because one thing was now clear. This wasn't just about a flight. This was about the future of the skies. Rain drummed against the hotel window as dawn broke, painting streaks of gray across the skyline. The city below stirred back to life, oblivious to the storm still brewing above. Inside the secure suite, Karen stood barefoot on the cold tile floor, phone pressed to her ear, eyes locked on the sunrise. "I need confirmation," she said calmly. On the other end, a voice replied, "Protocol Obsidian has been unlocked, but if you go through with this, there's no turning back." Karen didn't flinch. "I don't plan to." She hung up. Protocol Obsidian wasn't just a defense layer. It was a countermeasure. Built quietly into SkyGrid's backbone by Karen and Xavier before their falling out, it was designed as a failsafe to wipe rogue overrides, disable shadow contractors, and return authority to verified FAA channels, but only if 3 conditions were met. 1. A federal-level security breach had been triggered. 2. A key holder validated the threat manually. 3. Public interest and whistleblower protection were already in motion. As of this morning, all 3 boxes were checked. Down the hall, Agent Walker was already on his second coffee. He looked up as Karen entered the suite's war room, laptops, phones, whiteboards, half a dozen staff members surrounding her like a command center. "Any sign of Knox?" she asked. Walker shook his head. "Still off the grid. But we intercepted a digital transfer request. $2.3 million routed through ClearPath, linked to a shell account in Curaçao. Someone's trying to disappear." Karen stepped forward. "We're gonna stop him before he does." She plugged in her final USB drive. The room fell silent. "Everyone clear the line," she said. "I need a clean signal. No cloud mirroring, no remote taps." Walker gave a single nod, and the text cleared out. Karen opened the terminal and typed slowly. "Initiate Obsidian L2A override. Verify Lawson K passcode." Her hand hovered for a second over the enter key. Then she pressed it. Across 3 airport hubs, Atlanta, Denver, and LAX, backup control systems blinked once. ClearPath systems access logs froze. Override consoles crashed, and FAA servers lit up with one unified alert. Obsidian protocol active. Emergency control returned to federal authority. Meanwhile, Kristen Lively's next segment dropped like a lightning strike. ClearPath crisis, aviation network hijacked from within. She held up hard evidence, internal memos, whistleblower footage. Karen's security audit, and a new detail that shocked the nation. According to exclusive sources, former SkyGrid co-architect Xavier Lawson, ex-husband of Dr. Karen Lawson, may have played a central role in building the very system now under federal investigation. Karen watched from the room in silence. Even though her name now echoed in every newsroom from DC to San Francisco, her focus didn't shift. "This isn't about me," she said quietly. Walker looked at her. "Then what's it about?" Karen stood tall. "It's about the fact that we put our lives in the hands of unseen systems every time we board a plane, and the people behind those systems think we'll never look behind the curtain." That curtain was about to be ripped wide open. An anonymous FAA investigator leaked a partial transcript of internal AOC meetings. In one, Randall Knox allegedly said, "If Lawson doesn't comply, we bury her. Cut her mid-air if we have to. The public forgets in days. We don't." But the public didn't forget. Not this time. Back in the suite, Karen's phone vibrated. New message from Xavier Lawson's subject. "We need to talk." Her hand gripped the phone. No greeting, no apology, just the bare bones of a man who had once stood beside her and now hid behind digital shadows. She opened it. "You triggered Obsidian. That wasn't meant to go live. You know what happens next. Don't let this escalate. You and I both know the system isn't clean, but it's stable. If you dismantle it, you dismantle trust. Meet me. One last time. You choose the place." Karen stared at the screen. It wasn't a threat, it was a warning. But she wasn't afraid. She handed the phone to Walker. "Track it, but let it play out." "You want to meet him?" Walker asked. Karen nodded. I want him to see what integrity looks like when it refuses to fold. The storm hadn't passed, but now Karen Lawson wasn't just weathering it. She was the storm. And she was coming for every name behind the shadows. The meeting place was her choice. She picked somewhere quiet, familiar, brutally symbolic. An old decommissioned air traffic control tower at West Bridge Field, a forgotten regional airport 30 minutes outside the city. She and Xavier had once mapped out system redundancies here on whiteboards stained with coffee and dreams. Now it stood like a ghost. The perfect place for a confrontation, built on everything they once believed in, and everything they betrayed. Karen arrived at dusk. She wore no badge, no earpiece, no backup. Just a windbreaker, boots, and the same quiet resolve that had carried her through every trial in the sky and on the ground. She stepped into the tower's base. The air was stale. Dust clung to old consoles like memories too heavy to let go. Footsteps echoed on the metal stairs above. He was already here. Xavier Lawson stood by the observation window, silhouetted against the sunset. Older, leaner, a man who'd traded principle for power and who'd finally realized the cost. You always did love a dramatic view, he said without turning. Karen didn't smile. Not as much as I loved building something that mattered. Xavier turned slowly, eyes searching hers. I didn't want this, he said. I warned them not to push you. You helped them build it, Karen said, her voice like a blade. He exhaled. I built a safeguard, the same way we always do, in case the wrong hands got through. You think I trusted Knox? You trusted yourself enough to stay quiet while others were used, while lives were gambled on test runs. Children, Xavier. He looked down. I thought I could fix it from the inside. Karen stepped closer. You said that 5 years ago, when they tried to consolidate surveillance rights into one pipeline, when they pushed the pilot override initiative without consent, when you walked out because I wouldn't sign. She stopped a few feet from him. You don't fix broken systems by feeding them. He didn't argue. Instead, he pulled a worn leather folder from his coat and held it out. Inside were blueprints, logs, full chain of command memos, AOC, ClearPath, Department of Procurement, all signed, all damning. He looked up at her. They're preparing for a federal expansion, a single-point override across every major flight route in North America. No checks, no public audit. ClearPath is just phase 1. Karen's throat tightened. And you gave this to me? Why? Xavier's voice cracked, just slightly. Because even if I stopped believing in the system, I never stopped believing in you. They stood in silence for a moment. Not lovers, not enemies. Just two architects standing in the ruins of something they once built to keep people safe. Then Karen spoke. Walker's team is 30 minutes out. When they arrive, you hand them this, and then you testify. Xavier didn't hesitate. I will. She turned to leave, but he called after her. They won't let this go, Karen. Obsidian was the first cut. You've made enemies in places even I can't see. Karen paused, and without looking back, she said, Good, that means I hit the nerve. That night, Kristen Lively aired the next part of her series. Control Tower, the secret flight network hidden in plain sight. It showed maps, documents, audio clips, but it was the interview with Karen that lit the fire. They thought I wouldn't speak, that I'd be grateful to stay in the shadows of their system. But I've walked every hallway they built. I know where the exits are, and I'm here to hold the door open for anyone else who's ready to walk out of the dark. By morning, 5 new whistleblowers stepped forward. 2 senators demanded hearings, and 3 contractors lost federal clearance overnight. The system was finally fighting back, but so were those who had built it to dominate. Karen's phone buzzed. Message from unknown, you've exposed enough, back down, or we bring it down with you. Attached a photo, her house, her son's bikes leaning against the porch, and a timestamp, 5 minutes ago. Karen's jaw clenched. She looked at the image, then at the folder in her hands, and whispered one word, no. The photo of her porch was still open on the screen. The timestamp, 4:07 a.m. Her sons were asleep just feet away when it was taken. And whoever sent it, they wanted her to know exactly how close they'd gotten. Karen's mind didn't spin, it snapped into place. She tapped the speakerphone. Walker, we've got a new threat, close-range surveillance, possibly drones or embedded contractor. I'm activating Safe House Protocol Delta. On it, Walker replied, his voice calm but clipped. We're rolling units to your location now. Karen looked at her sons. still curled up under thick blankets, still dreaming. For now, she wouldn't let anyone touch them, and if it meant bringing the entire system to its knees, so be it. By sunrise, the safe house was cleared. Federal agents relocated Karen's family to a blackout facility deep beneath the Department of Aviation headquarters, an unlisted bunker used during 9/11 for emergency airspace coordination. It was never meant to be used again. But this wasn't just about aircraft anymore. This was war. Karen stood before a touchscreen console built into the wall of the operations room. On it, the live power grid schematic for 3 states, air traffic relay towers, data transmission hubs, backup control stations, and right in the center, a pulsing red node. Node, ClearPath black box, active. Is that? Walker started. Karen nodded grimly. Their ghost network, built off the primary grid, invisible to regulators, they run parallel command without oversight. Walker stared at the pulsing signal. Can you shut it down? Karen didn't blink. Yes, but it won't be clean. She tapped the screen. A warning popped up. Warning. Engaging this sequence will trigger failover blackout protocols across all contractor-controlled airspace. Estimated downtime, 9 to 11 minutes. Proceed? Walker hesitated. That's every plane, every system, for nearly 10 minutes. Karen turned to him. They're already pulling triggers in the dark. You want to keep pretending the lights are still on? He met her gaze and nodded. Do it. Karen keyed in the final authorization code. K. Lawson. Red line clearance. Reason for shutdown. Unauthorized infrastructure breach. Backup protocol engaged. Sky dusk. The moment she hit enter, the room dimmed. Not from the power, from what was about to happen. Across the eastern seaboard, terminal lights flickered. Radar towers blinked off, then on again. Air traffic control stations scrambled to manual. Pilots went cold, switching to internal backup. Passengers never knew. But in the tower rooms and data vaults where real control lived, panic set in. ClearPath's ghost grid had just disappeared, and with it, every illegal backdoor Randall Knox had ever paid for. Elsewhere, in a high-rise penthouse in D.C., Randall Knox stood in a darkened room, staring at a frozen screen. Red lights blinked, access codes failed, and then a single text appeared. Sky dusk protocol initiated. You're no longer in control. His phone rang. It wasn't his lawyer. It wasn't ClearPath. It was Xavier. You lost, Xavier said flatly. Stand down. I built this damn system, Knox barked. She thinks she can burn it down just because she's scared? There was silence on the line. Then Xavier said, She's not scared, Randall. You are. Back in the blackout facility, Karen watched as the ClearPath node finally turned gray. Offline, disconnected, no longer broadcasting. It was done. But just as she exhaled, a technician rushed in. Ma'am? We've got inbound signals. Scrambled. Unauthorized attempt to reconnect through international routing hubs. Karen leaned in. From where? Eastern Europe. Masked pings. Possibly state-sponsored. Walker stiffened. That's not ClearPath anymore. Karen's eyes darkened. No, that's someone else picking up the pieces. She looked at Walker. They're coming fast, faster than we can audit. Walker nodded. Then we don't just expose them. Karen turned to the screen. We cripple them. Later that night, Kristen Lively aired a surprise press segment. Live. No preview, no network embargo. The screen opened on Karen Lawson. Not in a lab coat, not behind a console, but standing at a podium in front of the Department of Aviation. Her voice was steady. They thought this was about control, but it was always about trust. You don't earn trust in silence. You earn it by showing people what's really going on behind the system they rely on every day. And if that means blacking out the sky to bring the truth to light, then I'll flip the switch myself. Because I'd rather see 10 minutes of darkness than another year of quiet manipulation. The video went viral in less than an hour. Sky dusk trended worldwide. Cybersecurity firms called her a hero. Others called her reckless. But none could deny the impact. For the first time in aviation history, a private citizen had shut down the shadow grid and lived to tell about it. But just before midnight, a new email hit Karen's encrypted inbox. No sender, no subject, no text, just one video file. She played it. It was drone footage, a feed from above, her bunker, with coordinates and a voice. You took our sky. Now we're coming for your ground. The drone footage had been a message, a warning, a threat. But to Karen Lawson, it was a declaration of war. She stood in the silent operations bunker, staring at the paused frame of her home from above. Her son's bikes, the cracked driveway, the timestamp that told her whoever sent this had stood over her life like a vulture. "This ends tonight," she said. Walker stepped beside her, armed now, not just with authority, but with resolve. "We traced the signal. Industrial park outside Langdon County. Off-grid relay towers, used to be satellite test ground." Karen's jaw tightened. That's where they're hiding the last node. ClearPath's physical relay site wasn't in any FAA database. It wasn't even on the Department of Transportation's radar, but it was very much real. And inside it, the final command tower still pulsed, quietly rerouting flight data to an unregistered hub overseas. If they didn't cut it at the source, Karen knew exactly what would happen next. They wouldn't just try to control the skies. They would crash the entire system and rebuild it in their image. A world where no flight, no passenger, no truth moved without permission. The convoy rolled out before midnight, 3 unmarked SUVs, 4 federal agents, 1 woman who'd once built the foundation of the modern aviation grid and now had to tear down her own creation to save it. As they pulled into the outskirts of the facility, the land turned dry, silent, overgrown. No cameras, no floodlights. Too quiet. Walker spoke into his radio. "Team B flanked the west entry. Lawson and I are moving with Alpha." Karen pulled her jacket tighter, not from the cold, but from what she was about to do. Inside the compound, the servers hummed. A single operator sat at the core console, face lit only by the white glow of cascading code. He didn't look up when Karen entered. He didn't have to. "I was wondering how long you'd take," the man said. Not Xavier. Not Knox. A third player. Director Leo Kravik. Former defense contractor. Current advisor to the AOC's Shadow Tech Board, the man who'd been feeding ClearPath from behind the curtain. He turned toward her slowly. "You realize what you've done," he said. "Skydusk shattered 23 shadow grids. You brought global routes to a halt. You've made enemies in time zones you can't pronounce." Karen stepped forward. "I didn't crash the system. I reset it." Kravik smirked. "You think this is about flights? This is about power, Dr. Lawson. You think people fear turbulence? No, they fear uncertainty. And we offered them control, predictability, safety." "You offered them cages," Karen replied, "disguised as runways." Behind her, Walker's team moved into position. One nod, and they would take the tower. But Karen raised a hand. "No." She stepped forward, opening her device. "We end this here, right now." Kravik laughed. "You can't shut me down from here. You'd need a clean code handshake and admin clearance from both root architects." Karen's gaze didn't waver. "I have mine." Kravik narrowed his eyes. "And Xavier's?" Karen typed. Lines of code scrolled. Then a message appeared. "Authorization 2A confirmed, XL." Kravik stepped back. "No, he wouldn't." Karen hit enter. The tower screens went black, every node offline, every unauthorized relay disconnected, every shadow pathway obliterated. Kravik lunged forward, but Walker grabbed him. "You'll answer for all of it," he growled. Kravik's smile twisted. "You think this ends with me?" Karen stared at him. "No, it ends with the truth." An hour later, at a secure government hangar, Karen sat before a sea of microphones. Kristen Lively stood beside her, cameras rolling live. "This isn't about politics. This is about the air we breathe and the sky we trust. I built a system to protect passengers. They corrupted it to control people. They used fear to build a network no one voted for. But tonight, we took it back." Across the country, terminals erupted in applause. Pilots sent coded thanks. Flight crews called her the firewall. And for the first time in months, Karen Lawson slept. Love stories where truth defies power, where one voice can flip the entire system. This is only the beginning. Subscribe now to follow Karen's final descent and discover the stories they never wanted you to hear. Justice doesn't sleep. And neither do we. Hit that button. Turn on notifications. Welcome to the Sky Rebellion. Aiva Stories.